Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Chronicles and Cocktails. I'm Josué, the spirited historian. Today, we are going to talk about the 10 oldest buildings in Puerto Rico still standing. Yes, today we are talking about the oldest buildings in Puerto Rico. And of course, a lot of buildings in Puerto Rico are very old, very old. San Juan is the second European settlement in all of the Americas. So it makes sense that we would still have very old buildings. Today, we're walking through time and to find the oldest buildings still standing in Puerto Rico. The ones that survived fire, invasions, and centuries of change. These aren't ruins, they're living witnesses. Most people think of Puerto Rico as beaches and music, and yes, we have that. But the island is also one of the oldest European settlements in the entire hemisphere. We've covered that before. Before Jamestown, before Plymouth, before much of what we call America even existed, Puerto Rico was already building in stone. But before we walk through Puerto Rico's oldest buildings, let's start with something just as old. A drink that's nearly forgotten. I did my research. Meet the sangari, the ancestor of the sangria, and one of the earliest cocktails to bridge Europe and the Caribbean. Most people assume that the name came from sangria, the cheerful mix of wine and fruit, but history runs the other way. Sangari has been around since at least the early 1700s, and both words share the same Spanish root, sangre. The first mention dates back to 1736. That's actually 3 years earlier than the foundation of Utuado, when a London punch seller mixed Madeira wines, citrus, and sugar and called it sangre. By the late 1700s, the drink had crossed the Atlantic and found a home in the West Indies, where it soaked up the spirit of the islands, rum, nutmeg, and cane sugar. Simple. By the 1800s, it was everywhere, from Miss Leslie's 1837 cookbook, describing it as wine, ale, or spirits sweetened and spiced, to Jerry Thomas's Bartender's Guide in 1862. If you're a true bartender, this is a book you should have. I'll link to it in the description below. Jerry Thomas's listed 6 versions, 6. Port, gin, ale, all chilled, sweetened, and finished with a touch of nutmeg. Then, of course, came Prohibition, and the sangari disappeared, replaced a century later by its flashier descendant. You guessed it, the sangria, which debuted to the world at the 1964 New York World's Fair. But behind every picture of sangria lies a ghost. The sangari, the drink that connected the Caribbean's sugar, Europe's wine, and the first generation of global bartenders. Today, we toast not with rum, but with something older. A drink from Puerto Rico's earliest centuries. Red wine, raw sugar, nutmeg, cinnamon, and, when you could afford it, a splash of brandy or port. And I'm thinking, maybe when those Spanish ships didn't arrive in San Juan, and all we had was sugarcane rum. I guess that's what you added. Very similar to the story of other cocktails like the old fashioned that started with gin. No ice, no garnish, just taste of the 1500s when sailors, priests, and settlers shared a single cup across oceans. So here it is, the sangari. Good enough for the episode today. Number 10. Iglesia San Germán de Auxerre, San Germán, circa 1688-1730. We begin in the southwest town of San Germán, one of my favorite towns, one of the oldest settlements in the Americas. The Church of San Germán de Auxerre rises at the heart of San Germán, one of the oldest towns in Puerto Rico. Between 1570 and 1573, the settlers of La Villa Peregrina chose to rebuild their lives on the Lomas de Santa Marta, following the colonial tradition of raising a parish church, a cabildo, and a small hospital around the plaza. Dedicated over 427 years ago to Saint Germain of Auxerre, in honor of Queen Germana de Foix, the second wife of King Ferdinand the Catholic, the first church was humble, built of wood and straw. Storms, earthquakes, and time forced many reconstructions. Yet, the church never moved from its original site. The current structure, completed in 1688 and restored after the 1737 earthquake, is neoclassical with 3 naves and 10 altars, 2 chapels, and a bell tower. Inside, it preserves centuries-old religious art, including the crucified Christ, the Nazarene, and Our Lady of Sorrows, alongside a pink marble baptismal font brought from Tarragona, Spain in the 1800s. A temple rebuilt through centuries of faith. San Germán de Auxerre remains a living witness to the endurance and devotion of Puerto Rico's oldest believers. Number 9. Capilla del Cristo, Old San Juan, circa 1753. Tucked at the end of Calle del Cristo in Old San Juan stands the small chapel built after a miraculous event where, legend says, a rider fell from the city wall and survived. The Chapel of Christ the Savior, small, quiet, and suspended between legend and faith. It was built sometime between 1753 and 1780, right at the edge of Cristo Street in Old San Juan. According to legend, this place was born from a miracle. In 1750, during a horse race through the narrow street, one rider lost control and plunged over the cliff. As the story goes, the Secretary of Government, Don Tomás Mateo Prats, cried out to Santo Cristo de la Salud, and the young man miraculously survived the fall. To honor that miracle, Prats ordered a chapel to be built on the very spot. Years later, some claimed the writer had actually died, but by then the chapel had already become something greater, a place of hope, gratitude, and faith. Whether miracle or myth, the Chapel of Christ the Savior holds a spirit you can feel the moment you stand before it. A reminder that every journey through San Juan begins best at the crossroads of legend and devotion. A sip before number 8. Number 8. Fuerte San Jeronimo del Boquerón, San Juan, circa 1790s. Part of San Juan's military defense system, San Jeronimo guarded the entrance to the Condado Lagoon. The fortress of San Jeronimo del Boquerón stands quietly at the mouth of the Condado Lagoon, facing Old Miramar district of Old San Juan. At first glance, it seems small, humble even, but this fort once carried the weight of an empire. Built in the 18th century, it replaced the smaller outpost known as El Boquerón, a simple battery that once guarded the eastern tip of the San Juan Islet. From that very spot, Spanish cannons thundered against Sir Francis Drake in 1595, and again in 1598 when George Clifford, the third Earl of Cumberland, returned fire and ultimately destroyed it. What rose from its ashes was San Jeronimo, a stronger, more strategic fortress that became part of San Juan's first line of defense, standing alongside the San Antonio Bridge Fort and Escambron Fort. And behind them all loomed the mighty Castillo San Cristobal, the last bastion protecting the heart of the city. San Jeronimo may be small, but its stories hold echoes of cannon, fire, smoke, and determination. Reminders of the moment when the Caribbean was the front line of the world. From here, soldiers replied British ships during the 1797 invasion, the same event that made heroes of Puerto Rican Spanish militia. Number 7. Porta Coeli Church and Convent, San Germán, 1609. Back to San Germán, Porta Coeli, the Gate of Heaven. Built by the Dominican friars, this is one of the oldest church structures still standing in the Western Hemisphere. Porta Coeli, Latin for Heaven's Gate. The name alone feels like a promise. Perched atop a hill in the historic town of San Germán, this humble structure once formed part of the church and convent of Santo Domingo de Porta Coeli, built by Dominican friars in 1609. From here, they look out over a growing settlement, what would become one of the oldest towns in Puerto Rico, guiding its people in faith and education. The convent is long gone, but the church remains, its weathered walls now home to the Museum of Religious Art of Porta Coeli. The building we see today, completed around 1692, is more than stone and timber. It's a survivor. Through earthquakes, wars, and centuries of change, Porta Coeli has stood as quiet witness to Puerto Rico's colonial past and its spiritual endurance. A doorway not just to heaven, but to history itself. Last time we were there, we went to this little bar restaurant that's right across from the Porta Coeli, and I had a refreshing beer and we had a very nice lunch. Number 6. Catedral de Nuestra Señora de la Guadalupe, Ponce. Originally built in the 1670s, rebuilt in 1839. Ponce's cathedral evolved over centuries, destroyed by earthquakes, rebuilt in neoclassical style, but still anchored to its 17th century origins. It was built in 1670 as a small heritage and later became a rustic chapel. In 1692, the city of Our Lady of Guadalupe of Ponce was founded, and the chapel was elevated to parish. In 1924, the Diocese of Ponce was established, and the temple was elevated to the rank of cathedral. The cathedral has endured numerous earthquakes that have damped its naves and chapels. The last major renovation began in 1918 after a long earthquake and was completed in 1934. This renovation gave rise to the current facade. It's the heart of the city, standing like an elder who's seen every generation pass through its plaza. Number 5. La Fortaleza, San Juan, 1533-1540. The oldest executive mansion still in continuous use in the Americas. Built as a fortress, transformed into a governor's residence, and now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. La Fortaleza, or the fortress in English. The name says it all, or at least it was supposed to. Completed in 1540, it was part of Spain's grand plan to fortify Puerto Rico, to guard the gateway of the Caribbean, the jewel of its empire. But the fortress didn't always live up to its name. In 1598, it fell to the English under the Earl of Cumberland, and again in 1625 to the Dutch commander Boudewijn Hendrik, breached its walls and set San Juan ablaze. Over time, the cannons went silent and the fortress took a new role. In 1846, it was transformed into the governor's residence, known also as El Palacio de Santa Catalina. Since then, it housed more than 170 governors of Puerto Rico. That's including from the Spanish time and the American period, all the way till the Estado Libre Asociado until today. Its halls echoing with centuries of politics, diplomacy, and power. From war to governance, from cannon fire to ceremony, La Fortaleza remains one of the oldest executive mansions still in use today, a living symbol of Puerto Rico's endurance and its ever-evolving story. For nearly 500 years, La Fortaleza has watched power come and go, but never lost its dignity. Número 4. La Catedral de San Juan Bautista. San Juan, originally built in 1521, rebuilt in 1540. The heart of San Juan, literally and spiritually. The first cathedral built in the New World, reconstructed in stone after a hurricane destroyed the wooden original. Here lies the body of Juan Ponce de León, the island's first governor, resting beneath Gothic vaults that survived centuries of storm. Número 3. La Casa Blanca, San Juan, built in the 1520s. Before Washington, D.C. had its White House, San Juan already had one. Built as the residence for Ponce de León's family, it became a symbol of San Juan's colonial aristocracy. Casa Blanca, or the White House, was built in 1521, the same year San Juan became Puerto Rico's capital. It was meant to be the home of Juan Ponce de León, the island's first governor and the legendary explorer who sailed in search of the Fountain of Youth. But fate intervened. He died during his Florida expedition, never stepping foot inside the house. For 2 centuries, his descendants lived here, their family's story woven into the earliest chapters of Puerto Rico's colonial history. Originally built of wood, the house was later rebuilt in stone and masonry after a devastating fire. When San Juan became the seat of government, Casa Blanca became Puerto Rico's first governor's residence, a title it held until the mid-1700s when La Fortaleza took its place. In time, Casa Blanca passed through the hands of soldiers, knights, and eventually history itself. Restored by the Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña, the home still stands surrounded by gardens, first planted by General Brooks, the island's first American military governor, a serene echo of centuries where legend, power, and memory still live behind the white walls. Número 2. Castillo San Felipe del Morro, San Juan, 1539. If one structure defines Puerto Rico, it's this one. El Morro is not just a fort, it's a monument to endurance. For over 400 years, it guarded the entrance to the Caribbean, witnessing every empire that tried to take the island. El Morro, the name alone stirs something, a mix of pride and awe. Rising above the Atlantic at the entrance of San Juan Bay, this fortress is Puerto Rico's most iconic landmark, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a living monument to the island's resilience. Construction began in the 16th century when Spanish conquistadors built it to guard the harbor from invaders and pirates. Over the centuries, its massive walls faced down the guns of enemy fleets and the fury of the sea itself. From its ramparts, the views stretch endlessly. The blue horizon, the city's pastel rooftops, and the sense that you're standing where history still breathes. El Morro isn't just a fortress, it's a symbol of defense, endurance, and the unbreakable spirit of Puerto Rico. From the Spanish crown to the American flag, El Morro has seen it all and still stands proud. And finally made it to number 1. The Church of San Jose, San Juan 1532, and the oldest of them all. Built just a decade after the Spanish arrived, it's one of the first Gothic structures in the Americas. For centuries, it held secrets, art, and the heartbeat of faith that survived conquest and modern alike. This building isn't just old, it's timeless. Juan Ponce de Leon, the first governor of Puerto Rico, was buried in the crypt of the church from 1559 to 1836, when his remains were exhumed and later transferred to the Cathedral of San Juan Bautista, the one that we just talked about. However, his coat of arms is still located near the main altar. His grandson, Juan Ponce de Leon II, was buried in the crypt beneath the sanctuary's floor. Puerto Rican painter José Campeche is also buried in this church, and in 2013 it was added to the National Trust of Historic Preservation's list of 11 most endangered historic places of 2013. When you walk through Old San Juan or the towns of the Southwest, you're not just seeing architecture, you're walking through 5 centuries of resistance. These buildings are proof that Puerto Rico doesn't just survive, it remembers. Stone after stone, prayer after prayer. These walls carry our history. Here is to every builder, every believer, and to the walls that still stand. Salute and cheers to history that never falls. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being with me on this Sunday morning. Well, it's Sunday morning in San Juan. Be good, get smart, go to church, have fun, eat something really good today, and read a book. Have a sangari or 2 or 3 if you're not driving. Salud.